Curmudgeon in the Cellar of 2017. I'm recording this at 12:15 a.m. on the 31st of December. The AMA that someone suggested, Ask Me Anything, is working quite well. I've selected a number of things to talk about tonight based on your questions on my Facebook page. And the first one I'm going to do is revisiting half damage. Apparently, the gentleman that asked me about it the first time was insufficiently sated with my answer. Again, half damage relates to the concept of hit points as we originally played them, and that is the ability to avoid a fatal blow, which was not infinite. Eventually, you were going to get skewered. That was the premise. It was a basic rule in warfare that you fought until you got skewered, or there was anybody left to fight. And so that's the way it was here. So half damage was silly in some cases. Half damage from Dragon's Breath was silly in my opinion. You were pretty much toasted. And, even if you're messing around with a medium-sized dragon, only taking 10, 12, 14 points or dice of damage, figuring the average for any die roll, figuring just average die rolls, of course that dragon's going to toast you. And even at half damage, it still might toast you. But I always figured with that, it was just, you got lucky. It made your saving throw, and the fire all went whoosh up over your head and around you, or you got behind something. I tended to use half damage as debilitating, longer lasting physical effect. And where that might be applied is entirely up to you. It could be the lasting effects of poison. It could be the lasting effects of a 12 or 15 round fight against a giant constricting snake, which you eventually manage to kill. You're still going to be pretty beat up. And so it's that type of lasting damage that I look at. I also look at there's parties, and I don't have a problem with this, and I encourage it at conventions. There's parties that go down there looking like a relief mission to some third world country that just had a horrible disaster. They're carrying so many cures and healing potions and whatever. I don't have a problem with that either. But I will start making them less effective the more they take. It's like, how many Red Bulls can you take before your heart explodes? How many times can you be hasted before your heart explodes? Common sense. That's all it is, common sense. Now, I have a list of these questions. I just cut and pasted everything off the page. I didn't spend a lot of work preparing the script. I just thought about the questions. So I have to don these to make sure I get it right. Okay. Keeping track of the small stuff. I don't usually. In convention games, it really doesn't matter. People don't play like they're, expect to live and go home. And if they do expect to live and go home, they expect to be burdened down with loot, and they don't care how many arrows they got to replace when they get there, or how many throwing knives or whatever. Food rations. I won't say that I never keep track of that kind of stuff, but it's the more rare occasion in which I do. When I'm doing a convention game, it's assumed that you got 30, 40 arrows in the quiver, whatever. I don't really worry about it, and I assume, based on the fact that I giving out fairly high in OD&D standards, fairly fairly high, real respectable characters, they're smart enough to go retrieve what they can. There's a slinger that I have a bag of unlimited stones, so I don't care how many stones he throws. I put it in there on purpose. Food, now that's a different story. I have an adventure where you have to get past the guardian gate, if you will, and his payment is 2 chickens. And of course, nobody knows that before they get there, and only the very older players, such as myself, get the reference to an old Jim Henson gig that was on the very first couple of years of Saturday Night Live. But the people have come up with some really interesting workarounds for that, and they've either conned him into or created something that was, close to create food. Well, a freshly killed chicken, if it was really freshly killed, you see what I'm saying. I don't really worry about rations. Now, if you were going on my Snake Riders of the Arredondo adventure up the river and you kept getting delayed, it would be assumed that you'd only have 7 or 10 days worth of iron rations with you anyway, and expected to hunt along the way. And if you said you did, I really wouldn't care about it. All right, so I don't really sweat the really small stuff, and certainly not in a convention game. Now, in my campaign when I was running it, we made time to buy more arrows, Bowman. Time to see about picking up a couple more throwing knives, thief, whatever. Stuff broke, it had to be replaced. I kind of stuffed in. There was when appropriate, there was a slight drain on the company, on the holdings of everybody for their room and board in between. Minor bookkeeping. If I was to go back into a full-blown campaign, it'd be so much easier to do now with the computer assistants to keep track of all that stuff. So I might, but I was too lazy. And again, the first really intense campaign was the playtesting campaign. It was I was trying new stuff for Gary. I was finding my feet as a DM. I was teaching 17 different people how to play this new game. So my early experience there is unique and hard to compare to anybody else's, certainly. Let's see what comes next. Oh, okay. My good friend Jay asked me this question, and I know why he's asking it to me. He's given me a little bit of a dig, and that's okay. And the basic question is, how many times have I told people just to wing it and not worry about the rules? And I'd have to answer to that. I couldn't count that high. Keep in mind that I play games for 2 reasons. I view them as infinitely challenging problem solving that keeps my brain agile and nimble. I play them to have fun. Played with 3 friends the other night. Simple game, Rails and a Ticket to Ride, Rails and Sails, the newest iteration. This time I played, I probably came in 4th out of 4. Certainly no better than 3. I know that. A couple times before I won. I had just as much fun winning as I did the other night because it was who I was playing with. It was because as the game went along, stuff happens. I play for the fun, and I play for the problem solving. I really don't play for the ego of winning, usually. Now, sure, there's exceptions. Back when my old group, the Friday Night Irregulars, used to get together every Friday night here in my basement. When we got out to Circus Maximus, oh yeah, I played to win. And so did all my buddies. And there'd be 6 or 8 of us down here. And you bet we were running over each other and flogging each other's horses. And that's real competitive. But for the most part, if I wasn't having fun, I wouldn't be doing it at all. So I say when you get caught on a rule, or you can't remember something, or somebody throws you a curveball and you don't know, wing it. Do what feels right. You can always go back and correct your mistake. Your misspeaking, I think, is more likely. Or if it's something new to your campaign, remember it and just play it that way from then on, and nobody knows you winged it. Too bad there's not a verb form for the verb wing. Wung it. Yeah, you wung it. You wang it. In any event, I do that all the time. I play fast and loose because I still play OD&D, which was fast and loose. It was all about the fun that was going on at the table and the narrative that was being developed. The story was everything. Now, as DM, as author, what elements you felt were important in the story was another. That was an individual thing. But have fun. What are you there for? When it's a campaign and you know you winged something, make a note of it. And after everybody's gone home, figure out what you did and fix it. If, for instance, the party ran into a bunch of goblins moving into the area and yours were too tough because in winging it, you made them too strong. And so the next time they run into them, they roll over and somebody says something about it. Well, they send the best group, the elite group out, and you slaughtered them already. Or if the reverse happens, well, yeah, those were the light troops that you counted earlier. Now you've met the main force, and so yeah, they're tougher. You can always work around stuff like that. I never use monsters straight out of the monster manual exactly the way it is. I always tinker with them. Maybe they got the flu. They're a little easier to kill. Maybe they just came back from a 3-week health spa and they're tougher to kill. Keep the story fresh. Keep the players guessing. Keep you guessing. Believe me, they'll throw you just as many curveballs as you can throw at them. So have fun. Wing it. Remember how you did it and make it part of the game. And then it's not really winging it anymore. It's an ex post facto thing, but hey, we're not talking the Constitution here. All right, let's see what we got here. The Gamer's Constitution. Now there's a project for you. Oh, geez, I got to do this again. Apparently, Gary told somebody about the Blackmore story and how I got handed the project. And they want me to retell it again. And I don't know. I got to figure out if Gary had it wrong or they think I got it wrong or whatever. I don't know. But for the last time, I hope, Blackmore was given to me in a peach basket. Not as one reply asked, in a bassinet. Though I understand there's a language difference here. It was a peach basket. Back when I was young, a lot of fruit, particularly apples, were sold in a bushel basket, which was a bushel of apples, half bushel baskets, and rectangular baskets that were varying amounts are usually sold as like 9 apples, whatever. Okay. A peach basket was generally a half bushel basket. They were about, you can't see my one hand here. They were about, must be about a foot tall give or take an inch, and about 18 inches across, and perhaps 10 inches deep or thereabouts. It might have been a peck. No, peck was less. These are all dry measures that I don't remember anymore. I used them when I was a kid because that's how you bought your vegetables at the roadside stands. But anyway, in this peach basket, this half bushel, whichever, was a it looked like today what I'd call a recycle bin. Pieces of paper thrown in there, various sizes, various shapes, various colors of paper, various handwritings on them. And I was handed it to literally, Gary physically handed it to me while Brian stood next to him and slightly behind him smirking and said, "Here's your first project. This is Dave's supplement. We're calling it Blackmore. In it is the Temple of the Frog," which we decided to publish to show everybody how they could create one of their own or borrow this one or whatever. And so out of that mess, I created Blackmore. I'll simply say that other than the Temple of the Frog, which was purely Dave's, and the only corrections I did were purely editing and, proofreading. The rest of the book is 2/3 stuff that I had to write or rewrite to put all his ideas together in a cogent and coherent fashion. He had a lot of good ideas, but that was just a brainstorm on a napkin type thing and no development of it. So I had to develop it. I had to rationalize it. So that's how Blackmore came about. That was my maiden voyage, my maiden race, if you will. And we all learned from it. So that's, I hope, the last time I have to tell the Blackmore story. It's not all that good a story to begin with. All right, let's see. Okay, I had an odd question. And it kind of relates to a couple other questions I got that I'm not addressing directly. The question was that my least favorite player race in first edition D&D and why. Well, first edition race wasn't class. First edition we had, as far as PCs, the traditional elves and humans and dwarves and half elves, which oddly enough, if you remember my last one when we talked about half orcs, way too many male authors writing fantasies about hooking up with female elves. And so it seems that half elves are okay. It's just they're the product of a loose elf, no longer maiden. In any event, we had hobbits, though after we got the letter, we had to call them halflings. That's what everybody played. Nobody played a gnome or any of that, because none of that was developed as player characters yet. There were limitations on dwarves. They were supposedly not to go above a 6th level as a fighter, which I knew was immediately nonsense, and so we had to totally ignored that. Because again, it's all tricks. It's not prowess, it's tricks. And prowess is represented by the level. And tricks and everything are what keep you alive. So I don't know. Probably the hardest to deal with from a DM's point of view were hobbit thieves, because they had all those little hobbit things going for them. And then when the thief class came out, they were naturals. And with their innate abilities and then thief skills, they became a real handful to deal with. And I had one in my campaign at Carbondale, big, tall, skinny kid. We all called him Hobbit. He was about 6'1", probably didn't weigh more than about 145 pounds. But he was the Hobbit. And he also achieved the highest levels of any of the PCs in my campaign while I was there, because he was he was a good player. He was a lucky player, and he played a Hobbit Thief, which had a lot of things stacked for it. So I didn't have a unfavorite. Races as classes is some bullshit that came later. And I think that's just what it is bullshit. I was asked also about, and keep along this line, how many of the other editions have I played? 0. I've read bits and pieces of them. I've read dozens and dozens of pages of threads on various websites about the pros and the cons of the various editions. From what I can understand, 3.5 was about the most screwed up of all of them. And second was really a cleaning up, but then a cleaning up in the editorial sense of better writing, but a cleaning up of getting rid of the stuff that made the religious folks nervous. And have I played any of the clones? Probably at a con. I think I played in a Swords and Wizards at a con once. I've read them, or I've read synopses of them, or I've done research on them online, and I don't have any opinions one way or another. If you're having fun, continue to have fun. If you're frustrated and you're not having fun anymore, look around and see if there's something you might like better. I only play RPGs at cons, and then I usually only run them. Occasionally, I'll be in a celebrity all-star type game where we all get to make fools of ourselves on closed circuit TV. That's usually in Texas. So I don't play RPGs anymore. I haven't for a couple of years since I closed down my local campaign because the convention schedule got in the way. I board game. Every other Wednesday, I get together with. I have 4 other friends that I've been board gaming with. Well, 2 of them I've been board gaming with since the early '80s. One other since the mid '80s, and Greg for a few years now. So we're old buds, and we know each other. We know each other's playing styles and whatever. And so we board game, and we board game for the problem solving, and because we play games that are different each time, or we mostly play for the fun. We get together, and it's a night out. Playing down in my basement on. I have a cover on or I have a pad on my pool table that levels it out, and then a cover. So we have a big pool table. Well, usually have about half of a big pool table surface to play on. The half's piled with junk. So I didn't have any race didn't. The race was just about advantages or disadvantages in the early editions. We didn't really get into it. What do I think about players running evil PCs? If you're going to run an evil campaign, well, of course. If you're running an otherwise neutral or good-centric or neutral-centric campaign, I think a DM's just asking for a pain in his posterior by letting people run evil PCs. It's like encouraging thieves to steal from the party. Back to good old Jolly's Knights at the Dinner Table again. Bob, their thief, is all the time palming and crotching stuff. And whenever they catch him at it, he claims he's just playing the role. Hey, I'm a thief. I'm king of the wall crawlers. Well, just as I found giving alignments to thieves of usually neutral or sometimes chaotic was a real bad move at conventions. Now I don't give them any. Yeah, I guess. I really have a problem. I'll be honest. I'm sorry for the pause. I understand doing the occasional evil. just for the hell of it, for the role reversal. I wrote for Ironwind Enterprises for one of their Kickstarters. I wrote an adventure where all the player characters were orcs and goblins, and you got to attack a human caravan, and you got to fight with bugbears, and you got to fight with other stuff as evil, and just be evil and do evil. And I've seen that be a one-off like that. It can be a lot of fun. I'll be honest with you. You can't have evil characters except as nemesis or antagonists in a otherwise neutral or good or lawful campaign. It doesn't work. Animosities will develop between the players themselves, and really that I'm just playing my character's alignment is a really lame ass excuse, and it has not lessened my urge to pop somebody in the nose. Not once, ever. Running an evil campaign. As a matter of fact, I don't know if it's still going, but I know of one that was running strong in Kansas City. And again, I don't know, maybe the nuns ruined me. Maybe I've read too many fantasy books, whatever. I don't think I would enjoy running an evil campaign as the DM. Just me. I'll go on a limb here and say that most of the people that would probably want to do that, I probably wouldn't want to go hang with at their favorite watering hole. Because most of the ones in Kansas City that were in that campaign were ex-cons that all learned to play in the joint. So I don't think evil PCs are a good idea in a regular, ordinary, run-of-the-mill campaign. Now, if I can see a 6 or 8 adventure arc, a little mini campaign of, hey, what the hell? Let's go get this city full of goody two shoes clerics or goody two shoe elves, whatever. Let's go make their lives miserable in hell and have a good time doing it. I can see that as being very cathartic and very fun, but I can't see doing it month in, month out, year in, year out. In my opinion. But if you do run one, it's evil, and you kill little babies and eat them, and I probably don't care if you don't introduce yourself at the next convention we find ourselves at. It's okay. Okay. Let's see. What else do I have underlined here? Okay. I was asked about the best game accessory. Well, okay. This could go so many directions. Certainly the most extravagant game accessory I have ever seen is a set of dice made out of a meteorite. And the second is probably the set of dice made out of mammoth ivory, petrified mammoth ivory. Now, practical. I'll just name a few of what I think are great accessories that have enriched the playing of the game. Dice towers are right up there on the list. As I mentioned earlier in one of my curmudgeons, that we probably used the very first dice towers in D&D down in Carbondale. People weren't comfortable rolling, especially the four-sider gave people a lot of problems figuring out how to make it hop and feel like it was a fair roll. So I made a couple of dice boxes out of a couple of wooden cigar boxes and some pieces of balsa wood. And so I think the dice tower was a great leveler of the playing field. When everybody dropped, it could be their dice, but when everybody dropped their dice, through the dice tower, that was the one thing that tied the whole table together. Everybody had to use the dice tower. Everybody knew that all the rolls were fair and square. Great addition, dice tower. Been a lot of goofy numbered dice that I still find a little silly, but there are games that use them in their mechanics, and so they've certainly broadened the range of dice you can have in your huge dice bag. Minis, of course. Figuring the great irony of this D&D and minis is that D&D was written and marketed to minis people when minis for the game did not exist. There weren't any hero figures. There weren't any orcs. There weren't any goblins. There weren't any, like this. They just weren't being made. There were a couple of small company exceptions. One of whom was in Salt Lake City back in the 70s, McEwen Miniatures. Jim McEwen was his name. He made some marvelous stuff, brilliant small castings of weapons. Anybody that was converting figures was using McEwen's weapons to convert with. So minis were good for the people that are tactile players. The auditory players are already having their dopamine fix, and now the tactile players have theirs. But if it came right down to it, probably the neatest thing, the most valuable, the most useful would have to be what we used to call modules. The greatest one of all time, as I talked about previously, is the City State of the Invincible Overlord. Those came out, and for all the people that had the imagination to tell the story, to spin the yarn in the dungeons, in the jungle, whatever, but didn't have either the time or the inclination or the mindset to envision an entire world or entire campaign, now these marvelous modules came out. Because, hey, we were here to have fun. Remember? We're having fun. Whether it was the G series that we first came out with, the Giants, which were really in many regards primitive compared to some of the quality of the stuff some of the Judges Guild was putting out at the same time. I think that's probably the greatest contribution to the industry, the hobby, whatever, that I've seen come out. It certainly raised the expectations. This is another question about, what are gamers' expectations today? Well, today, Kickstarter shows us that if you want a game that's got lots of little fiddly bits, pieces or soldiers or monsters, and lots of pretty cards and all this kind of stuff. And hell, all we wanted was the next 48-page supplement with some new rules to hopefully solve some problems we'd run into. All we were looking for was some different colored dice. There were so few sources for dice. We were just, trying to have all the colors of the 20-siders. The expectations today are so much grander, so much greater that they hardly bear comparison by the difference in magnitude. Today's gamers they're just damn picky and demanding in what they want. I don't write enough words when I write my modules. When modules came out, they proved that, okay, you don't have that skill set, but you can still have a great time. And with something the size of a city-state interdimensional overlord, you could play in that rascal for a couple of years. Because here it is all laid out. What you do with it's entirely up to you. That part's easy. It's, writing a story about what happens to 6 guys that go trekking through the jungle isn't all that hard. If you know all the things they might run into in the jungle. Same with the city. Walking about in this enormous city wasn't all that hard to do if you knew what neighborhoods they were in, et cetera, et cetera. So that's probably the single greatest thing. My tomorrow is a new year. I got a new game, a newly purchased game coming that I'm eagerly awaiting. I've got that'll be my second new game of 18, because the first new game on our next game night is the new edition of Escape from Cold. It's one of my favorite old multiplayer games. 17 was an interesting year. There are parts of it I don't even want to think about. There are parts of it I can't remember because of the chemo every 2 weeks and the steroids and the fluids and the transfusions and all that kind of stuff. There's a couple of months in there that are a big blur. There was a lot of good that came out of the year. The amount of tremendous support that I got from friends and strangers was astonishing and gratifying and heartwarming and helped me get through it. So for 18, I'm hoping to remain in the apparently good health that I'm in now. I hope you all stay healthy. I've got another great grandbaby coming in 18. It's going to be another great grandson. So I'll have 2 of each, great granddaughters and great grandsons. So my hope for you is that you have an equally pleasant and happy and fulfilling year as I hope to. I've certainly come to appreciate it, the small things in life a little differently. And just remember that if you hang in there, things generally get better or you die. Well, we don't know yet. Nobody's come back to tell us what happens after you die. So, all right. Can't do anything about that. You might die tomorrow walking out in your backyard and a piece of frozen pea ice out of an airliner flying overhead plummets through the skies and gets you in the head and kills you. That actually happened to a house once. It plummeted through 2 stories of a house like a cannonball. In any event, it's either going to get better. So go for the better. Focus on the better. Think about the better. I thank everybody who helped me see the better through my interesting journey through 17. I'm looking forward to new games that I know are coming out. I'm looking forward to new people to play them with. I'm looking forward to the conventions I'm going to be at in 18. I plan to be at TotalCon in February. Hope to be at GaryCon in March. Not sure about that yet. My transportation's up in the air. Plan to be in Dallas in June and back in Madison in November and doing some other things along the way. And if I'm out your way and you know I'm coming, and let me know, and who knows what'll happen. But anyway, I wish you the continued success in 2018. I wish you good gaming. I got lots more questions, but anything you got, you can go to that Facebook thread, that Ask Me Anything thing, put it on there, and I'll add it to the list, and eventually I'll probably get to them all. So having said that, I wish you all a very, very happy new year and a great, great, fulfilling 2018.